Hello, everyone, and welcome to Teachly University. And in this lecture today, we're going to be diving into how to use our imagination to create a desired reality. And all of us use our imagination, of course, to accomplish various things. And what we imagine ultimately can determine our external reality in some way. And when you consider Earl Nightingale and what he discussed in his work in The Strangest Secret, where he ultimately says, and this is the underlying theme of The Strangest Secret, is that you become what you think about, or more specifically, what you imagine in the mental studio of your mind. How you use your imagination, what you consistently visualize and think about will shape your reality. That's why it is so important that we learn how to cultivate our imagination in such a way that is much more constructive to help us create a more desired reality or more desirable circumstances. Because unfortunately, in our world that we live in, it's very distracting. Our cell phones, social media, the 24-hour news cycle, there's a lot of things that are designed to grab our attention and to move us away from really cultivating an imagination that serves our own self-interests, that can help produce more desired results. So to quote Charles F. Haanel from the Master Key System, which we're going to be focusing a lot on today in this lecture, he says that then comes a process of visualization. You must see the picture more and more complete, see the detail, and as the details begin to unfold, the ways and means for bringing it into manifestation will develop. One thing will lead to another, thought will lead to action, action will develop methods, methods will develop friends, and friends will bring about circumstances, and finally the third step, or materialization, will have been accomplished. So when you see and visualize a more desirable reality, when you envision a more empowering and prosperous future, and when you focus on that and you imagine and feel as if what you want is already brought about in the present moment, then that's what creates a snowball effect where things begin to happen because you start to take action, not action that feels like it's work per se, but it is congruent with your beliefs or your deeply held beliefs of what it is that you want. That is also aligned with your self-image. So when mind and body are one, when you start to take action that is inspired, where you're not trying to force an outcome, I think that's the best way to describe it. When you're taking action, not in trying to force an outcome, but taking action when you enter this state of flow where action meets skill, and holding on to that vision, feeling as if the wish is fulfilled, things begin to happen without much effort. When you take action, new methods begin to show up, new synchronicities, new opportunities reveal themselves to you, new relationships, new friends, new circumstances. You can see how that snowball effect begins to build to the point where it is inevitable that what you want will materialize itself in your life in some way. And that is how powerful our imagination is, and why it's so important that we learn how to visualize and see and picture what it is that we want. And this is not a perfect process. We each have different ways of how we visualize what it is that we want. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as we can at least have an idea or know what it is that we want, we can move in the direction of a more desired reality. But it's important to know what it is that we want, believe that it is possible, and take the time to visualize and meditate and focus on more desired results. So nature compels us all to move through life. We cannot remain stationary however much we wished. Every right-thinking person wants not merely to move through life like a sound-producing, permeating plant, but to develop, to improve, and to continue the development mentally to the close of physical life. This development can occur only through the improvement of the quality of individual thought and the ideals, actions, and conditions that arise as a consequence. Hence, the study of the creative processes of thought and how to apply them is of supreme importance to each one of us. This knowledge is the means whereby the volition of human life may be hastened and uplifted in the process. Humanity ardently seeks the truth and explores every avenue to it. Bob Proctor, who I've studied a lot of, and he passed away as of late, I believe about a year or so ago. And he was also in The Secret as well as other works, and he's really a pioneer in the personal growth space. He talked about the importance of studying the mind, of studying the great works, of paying attention, of studying important information through repetition to where eventually this empowering information can become second nature to you, where it becomes automatic. So that is why it is so important that we understand the importance of learning how to think, learning how to utilize our imagination, understanding the creative processes of thought, and that there's a natural law, a natural order of things. And when you think a certain way, it produces a certain amount of results, or more specific results. And it reminds me of the book, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, that he talks about how the wealthiest and most successful among us, how they differ is that they think a certain way. They don't necessarily work harder than anybody else, but they think in a certain way that produces desired results. So therefore, it makes sense then that in order for us to achieve a better life, to improve our circumstances and our conditions, and live the more ideal life and enter the more ideal state, it makes sense then that we must think in a certain way. We must be able to control and harness the power of our imagination and focus on what it is that we want and not so much worry about how the end result will happen. We visualize and see what we want, and we go about our day knowing in faith that it will be brought forth into our life. We don't necessarily know when it's going to happen. Life is not as linear as we would like for it to be. But we walk in faith knowing that the wish is already ours. The dream has already come true. And that you're already feeling as if what you want is already now in the present moment. And this is a process you get to play around with. Imagine different scenarios and opportunities and circumstances. And imagine as if they're already in your present moment now. And by doing so, then, you harness the creative process of your imagination, where creation is already done because what you see and believe already comes true in your reality. And this is incredibly empowering. So to quote Hanal, he says that you will readily see that what we think determines the quality of mind, and that the quality of mind in turn determines our ability and mental capacity. And you can readily understand that the improvement in our ability will naturally be followed by increase in attainment and a greater control of circumstances. It will thus be seen that natural laws, and I mentioned this in the previous lecture slide, there's a natural order of things that we must embrace, where thinking in a certain way, by recognizing these laws of the mind, can produce more desirable and harmonious results. So that the natural law works in a perfectly natural and harmonious manner. Everything seems to just happen. If you want any evidence of this fact, simply compare results of your efforts in your own life. When your thoughts were prompted by high ideals and when you had selfish or ulterior motives in mind, you would need no further. As I mentioned, it's not trying to force an outcome. When you think a certain way and imagine the wish fulfilled and harness the power of imagination without force, things just seem to happen. Because you can only work so much. You can only work so many hours during a day. You can only take so much action. Ultimately, it's a matter of the creative process of your own mind and how you harness it. So the quality of your thoughts and the quality of your mind will determine your external circumstances. So much of the work then, and I don't even want to say that it is work, but in order to achieve a more harmonious life, it makes sense then that we must control what we think about. That's why meditation, and I've said this repeatedly throughout many of my lectures, meditation, journaling, taking the time to disconnect from our external environment for a period of time, and to meditate and focus on what it is that we want, and assume the wish fulfilled without force. Creation is already done, and what we see and believe is already brought forth in our reality without much effort. It just happens. And that's the exciting part of the creative process. You don't have to force it. You just become what you seek and you enter the ideal state now. So then amid all the mysteries by which we are surrounded, nothing is more certain than that we are ever in the presence of an infinite and eternal energy from which all things proceed. We've heard the term infinite intelligence. We've heard energy, God, the universe, universal intelligence, is other words to describe this intelligence, this energy that is within us and all around us. And once again, to reference Wallace D. Wattles' work in The Science of Getting Rich, that there's this thinking stuff, this energy, this infinite intelligence, that if we impress upon this intelligence what it is that we want, communicating with it through feeling, assuming the wish fulfilled, then that's when things just happen because we are becoming one with this intelligence that exists. Not by force, not trying to force an outcome. I've been repetitive in this underlying theme of not trying to force something, because when we try to force an outcome, it's because our mindset is based on lack and scarcity, where deep down we don't have faith and believe that what we want is possible. But when we impress upon this intelligence what it is that we want, and assume the wish fulfilled and communicate with this intelligence through feeling, that's why it's so important that we monitor and become much more mindful of the way we feel. That if we're always feeling distracted, discouraged, frustrated, angry, anxious, that can produce undesirable results in our life. So it makes sense then that we want to become much more mindful of that. This is not to say that we should never experience negative emotions. In fact, quite the opposite. We want to listen to these negative emotions because these negative emotions are telling us what it is that we actually want. So rather than trying to suppress emotions, we must listen to them. And once again, not trying to force anything. It is to let go, even letting go of our desires. That once we do that, that's when we unblock this energy that we've been holding back within us for so long. And once we unleash this energy, that's when we can truly authentically express ourselves and live in the ideal state now. So then our difficulties are largely due to confused ideas and ignorance of our true interests. The great task is to discover the laws of nature to which we are to adjust ourselves. Clear thinking and moral insight are therefore of incalculable value. All processes, even those of thought, rest on solid foundations. The keener the sensibilities, the more acute the judgment, the more delicate the taste, the more refined, the more moral feelings. The more subtle the intelligence, the loftier the aspiration. The purer and more intense are the gratifications which existence yields. Hence it is the study of the best that has been thought in the world, and it gives supreme pleasure. The powers, uses, and possibilities of the mind under the new interpretations are incomparably more wonderful than the most extravagant accomplishment or even dreams of material progress. What can we make out of this excerpt from the Master Key System? Well, what Hanel is trying to say is that what brings about the most amount of pleasure is not the achievement of a material goal or possession, but rather it's when we enter these states of flow, when we're in the present moment and we are not only becoming our authentic selves, we are in this ideal state where we're using all of our mental and physical abilities to the best of what we can do. That we're in the moment, that we're utilizing all of our potential without worrying about a particular outcome. And I've discussed flow in many of my lectures. When we enter in the present moment, we're in the zone. We're not worried about the future or living in the past. We're just in the moment now. And in Stephen Coller's work, The Rise of Superman, where he interviews many high-level athletes, such as skydivers, skateboarders, surfers, etc., many of these athletes describe that when they're in this state of flow, where they're utilizing all the power of their body and mind, when the body and mind are one, they almost feel godlike. They feel invincible. They feel like they can do anything. And they feel that they are at their best because they're not worried about what is going to happen. They're enjoying themselves and they're thoroughly enjoying what it is that they're doing. And that is the ultimate reward that is just as pleasurable as achieving a particular outcome. And ultimately, it is the person that you become in this process that is the greatest reward. And that's something to think about when we're setting goals and pursuing them, that the purpose of a goal is to help us transform into the person we've always wanted to be. And you can be that person right now. And when you realize that, life changes because you're no longer trying to chase something or force something. You've already achieved what you want. Your dreams have already come true because you're in the ideal state right now. And that is encouraging and empowering and really inspiring, because you realize then that at any given moment, no matter what is happening outside of you, no matter what your circumstances are, you can change your life right now if you decide to do so. You can make that decision. So then most men try to change effects by working with effects. They fail to see that this is simply changing one form of distress from another. To remove the score, we must remove the cause, and this cause can be found only in the world within. What is common for many of us is that we try to solve problems within the problem itself. So if we have debt, we focus too much on trying to get out of debt, rather than what we should really be focusing on is abundance. Abundance of, or financial abundance, abundance of career, of opportunity, of relationships. By focusing on the good, by outgrowing our problems simply fade away. They no longer become a problem anymore because we've outgrown them, and we've adjusted our mindset. We're on another plane where our problems simply no longer matter to us anymore because we've outgrown them, and we are in a mindset of abundance and prosperity. And when you're in that mindset, no matter what your problems are, your problems shrink. They become much smaller, and you realize they weren't really the problems at all once you have outgrown them. So then the greatest remedy in the world is change. And change implies the passing from the old to the new. It is also the only path that leads from the lesser to the greater, from the dream to the reality, from the wish to the heart's desire fulfilled. It is change that brings us everything we want. It is the opposite of change that holds us back from that which we want. But change is not always external. Real change, or rather the cause of all change, is always internal. It is the change in the within that first produces the change in the without. To go from place to place is not a change unless it produces a change of mind and a renewal of mind. It is a change of mind that is a change desired. It is a renewal of mind that produces better health, more happiness, greater power, the increase and the consequence of the increase of all that is good in life. In the constant renewal of mind, the daily change of mind is possible regardless of time, circumstances, or places. And this reminds me of Einstein's quote where he says that insanity is defined by doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If we are to seek change and experience change within our lives, it's important that we start from within, what we are imagining and what we're thinking about. And if we keep thinking and acting the same ways that produces the same result, it is unlikely then that we are to produce new results in a change of circumstance. So it makes sense that in order for us to change our circumstances, we must think in new ways. And we must embrace change. And change can be very uncomfortable. For the most part, many people don't like change, but change is necessary if we are to go from where we are to where we want to be. And you'll notice that it feels like there's this gap between where we are and our more desirable circumstances. But we close that gap by acknowledging change and by expressing our authentic selves, where we begin to imagine and feel as if what we want is already here. And when we do that, then it is natural then for change to occur. And change could be a little uncomfortable. It requires making new decisions, new choices, and changing our thought patterns, which is not easy to do because especially when they've been habitual and they're subconscious, where we've had these same habits for years and years on end. But by simply, for example, embracing or using new affirmations, just entertaining some new ideas just for a few minutes a day, that can radically transform our lives, where it can help us overcome some of these self-limiting thoughts and beliefs that have been holding us back for years. We can do this instantly. Just making small changes can produce desirable results. And it's harnessing this power. And sometimes it also is changing our external environment. Maybe we want to try new places. So travel, I think, is so important. To go up and speak to random strangers, to get out there and try new things. Change your routine. And when you do that, it will automatically renew your mind. The brain likes novelty. So it's important that we introduce novelty into our lives and try different things. It's very easy to fall into the same routine over and over again. But when we begin to embrace change and try new things, then change is a natural consequence. So to quote Christian D. Larson, he says that the average mind requires a change of environment before he can change his thought. He has to go somewhere or bring into his presence something that will suggest a new line of thinking and feeling. The mastermind, however, can change his thought whenever he so desires. A change of scene is not necessary because such a mind is not controlled from without. A change of scene will not produce a change of thought in the mastermind unless he's so relaxed. So, in any moment, as I've said, you can decide right now to change. Instantly, you can decide, I'm going to feel abundant and happy right now. It's not necessarily easy, per se, but it is very doable. You can make that decision. And we must leverage our emotions and feelings to do so. Because if you keep thinking and acting in the same way, that produces the same undesirable results. Imagine the consequence of that, that if you don't change, you will continue to suffer through the same problems over and over and over again. So it makes sense then that we want to harness this emotions and feelings and use it as leverage and use our imagination and imagine that what would happen if we did change. Imagine all the good, all the new opportunities, experiences, relationships, career, health, financial abundance, etc. will occur when we embrace change. And we can do so by deciding right now that we will change, that we are no longer going to indulge in negative thought patterns that have been holding us back. And by using our imagination, imagine in detail what it is that we want. It could be an image or something that reminds you of who you really are and what you really want. Then you will no longer be holding yourself back because you are imagining new vistas of new possibilities. And that's when life becomes much more exciting and fun. When you get to play around with this creative process, knowing full well that you have the power to create anything you want in your life through the power of your imagination. So thank you so much for listening to this lecture. Make sure you hit that subscribe button where you can watch all my lectures on personal growth, wealth building, creativity, and entrepreneurship. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Take care.